don't say you're feeling low when it snows in Georgia too. Your heart, it longs for knowing, and I know it's hard for you to imagine any comfort when you're only passing through. 500 days since I looked into my soul. 500 ways that I tumble back in the hole. I wanna rip my script apart. I wanna love you where you are. I just don't know. Rip my script apart. 'Cause when we fight, it starts feeling like 500 nights alone. I'd heard your story once before, already knew your tune, but it didn't ease the aching, babe, when up again you flew. Your heart, it longs for loving, but you think too much to choose any offering of comfort when you're only passing through. 500 days since I looked into my soul. 500 ways that I tumble back in the hole. I wanna rip my script apart. I wanna love you where you are. I just don't know. 'Cause when we fight, it starts feeling like 500 nights alone. And when we fight, it starts feeling like you might leave 500 more. I hope you find the sun someday and all your dreams turn out. You used to sing, you had me, babe, before you shut your mouth. But I still hear that voice in little songs above my house. I'm just stuck inside that melody. Birds are flying south. Stuck inside the melody, and birds are flying south. I wanna rip my script apart. I wanna love you where you are. I just don't know. When we fight, it starts feeling like 500 it blue. Please don't say you're feeling low when it snows in Georgia too. Your heart, it longs for knowing, and I know it's hard for you to imagine any comfort when you're only passing through. 500 days since I looked into my soul. 500 ways that I tumble back in the hole. I wanna rip my script apart. I wanna love you where you are. I just don't know. 'Cause when we fight, it starts feeling like 500 nights alone. I'd heard your story once before, already knew your tune.
backlash, then she probably would. You see what I'm saying?
I see.
So
what you're
there are people whose voices are not heard because they're cowards, basically.
saying. Right.
And I want everybody's opinions to be out there to some degree, and I don't like silencing free speech in any way, shape, or form.
Well, but that's not. It's not
Generally.
silencing it.
Generally.
Though.
It's
That's
not
that's
silencing
an
it.
important distinction. It's identifying the person who's saying what.
People would self-silence because of that, and I think
Yeah.
that's one of the main.
But that's
reasons
what
I
the
don't like
left
it.
is doing today.
Yeah.
Anyway, let me get back to the
Okay,
conspiracy.
go ahead.
So she begged her to kill the project and said, "Oh, you're going to be harassed. There's going to be all these people that come after you,
Mhm.
you know." And Candace says that like 2 hours after they hung up, she's inundated with harassment from all these obvious like screen names, like Trump Man 45, or you know what I mean, like
Bots, maybe.
Exactly.
Yeah.
That's exactly what. Well, that's what she believes.
Yeah.
Obviously, there's no way to prove it, but I mean,
Yeah.
it's pretty apparent. And then after that, like news outlets started contacting her, and instead of trying to find out about her project or about like the bullying or whatever, they tried to figure out. They were trying to figure out where her funding was coming from.
Mm.
Essentially, probably to attack the funding, just like the Wall Street Journal does, like when
Yeah.
they exposed, because I can't stand the Wall Street Journal. I think I've made that clear. Like, fuck them.
Well, I can't stand most media outlets.
Well,
of any
no, but they
kind.
ruined
Yeah.
YouTube, or they were a huge part of ruining YouTube.
No, I get
Like,
it.
what was it? What was it called? The Adpocalypse.
Yeah,
you
yeah.
remember that?
Mhm.
But I remember when
That
YouTube
did make
used
a
to be
huge
great, man.
difference too.
And you know what's
yeah.
crazy? And I've thought about this a little bit. We're getting off track, but that's okay. We're having a conversation. Is like I feel like this is how we end up with censored content.
Mm-hmm.
Effectively, you can't, if you're monetizing a video on YouTube anymore, I don't think you can curse in it.
No, you can curse.
I don't think PewDiePie bleeps all of his out. A lot of people
that wouldn't
do.
surprise me. Yeah.
Well, no, but that's the thing, man. Is like
Yeah.
they've found their way to censor it. You go after the money, you know,
Yes.
and
yes.
that's what they've done, man. YouTube used to be great.
Mhm.
It used to be awesome. It was this place where people could upload unique, original content that
Yeah.
they created. It could be whatever, and as long as people liked it, which is a free market at work, right? Like people are consuming things that they like or they want to see, then they would get paid for it.
Yeah.
You know?
Yeah, I agree. I think that when it comes to something like YouTube, I think everything should be monetized. If you're going to have monetize as a part of it, don't get me wrong, some rules and all that, but as far as censorship rules, no rules on that.
Yeah.
That's one of those things I say, let the market decide, if you will. But because just as an example, so some of the shows that I really like to watch, Jimmy Dore show, Secular Talk, Jamarl Thomas, these guys, every time they talk about Syria, they get it demonetized. Whereas on the other hand, if CNN talks about Syria, CNN is going
Right.
to talk about us going to Syria in a favorable sense, unlike the shows I just mentioned who do not want to go to Syria. They will be monetized, and so it's another way of, like you said, censorship, and it's allowing certain people to talk and not other people in order to create propaganda, essentially.
Yeah. I agree. They're killing what I love. And Twitch
Right.
has gone that route too, man. Like Twitch.
And I keep wondering about what's going to happen with us as well. So are we?
Yeah,
gonna-
how can they get the podcast? That's the
Mhm.
question. Is that can they attack the advertisers there? Because I don't think the advertisers on podcasts care.
Mhm.
Like particularly, like if you listen to a lot of the bigger podcasts, Joe Rogan, Bill Burr, T-Fat K, the ones that I like to listen to anyway. Those are the ones that I like to listen to anyway. But if you listen to them, a lot of them have the same advertisers, and they have this similar points of view, that definitely would not be considered advertiser friendly on YouTube, So
Right.
it's just
Well, sometimes you get big enough that
they can't stop you.
They can't do it.
Yeah. Like
It's
Joe. Joe is absolutely there.
Yeah, like Joe. So when he had on, is Abby Martin, I think her name is?
Yeah.
So obviously she had the talk about Israel and the
Sure.
incredible racism, that sort of thing. I highly doubt that video got demonetized.
Or
just
you
be-
mean monetized?
well, I said I highly doubt that it got demonetized.
Well,
just
no,
because
on
of who he
YouTube,
is.
I almost
Yeah.
bet it was.
Well, maybe.
Yeah,
Okay.
YouTube.
Does
it
that
probably
happen
was.
to him?
Oh yeah.
Oh, okay.
Oh yeah.
I haven't heard him
happens.
talk about it, so I don't know.
Yeah, he does. He does. I
Okay.
mean, I listen.
I
more
don't.
than
I
you
don't
do.
listen to
Yeah.
him. That
Yeah,
I
no,
listen to him when he's got somebody on I like.
Yeah. But I mean, just what's in your title
Yeah.
will get you demonetized these days. You know, like and.
Well, to be fair, he just puts names.
Yeah.
So-
No, I'm not talking
Yeah.
about him necessarily. I'm just talking YouTube as
Yeah.
a whole.
No, I'm with
you.
You.
Can be
Yeah, you could just
demonetized.
all you have to do is put Syria in the title and
Sure.
boom, gone.
Yep. Yeah. And it's crazy, man. And it's because there's some I feel like that's why I'm more conspiratorial, because for me this can't be just this is what people want or this is just how it happens. You know what I mean? Like it can't be like that. I think there's some level of authority, some higher power that is dictating how this goes.
Yes.
And it could be the people that control the media. It could be. I mean, like you said, wasn't it you that said like GE was like one of the don't they own MSNBC? Who
They
didn't?
did, yeah. Yeah, they were a defense contractor that owned MSNBC in the run up to the Iraq War, and surprise, surprise, the people who spoke out against the Iraq War, Phil Donahue, their highest rated show at the time, as an example, were fired.
Right.
Some of them, in fact, due to their contracts, were also not even able to work again for several years later. They were moved to a closet and couldn't do anything.
Yeah.
You know, it was definite propaganda in that case.
Yeah, and it's great. Like Boeing is one of the major funders, and they like, man, it's that was so disappointing.
Well, to be
find out.
fair, every time I see a Boeing commercial, I do think about going out and buying a plane.
Yeah, well, isn't that weird?
Yeah.
Yeah, but no,
Why? So why are they advertising?
because
on
they are
there?
military. They
Be-
make military equipment.
Well, here's the thing. So nobody's going to buy a Boeing product who's watching the show. I mean,
No.
other than if there's a billionaire watching the show
Oh,
or something
right.
like that.
Yeah.
And so why are they advertising on there? Because that's how they're paying them. That's how they're paying them to say what they want to say
there
and
you
not say
go.
what they don't want to say.
Yep, there you go.
It's the money.
And that's such
I
a
don't-
disappointment because
Yeah.
Boeing airplanes are my favorite. Because for people who don't know, I'm a licensed pilot.
Mhm.
I've never flown a jet, but I have flown in like training simulators that are full motion, like full cockpit. Like I mean, I can fly them. I'm
Mhm.
confident that I could fly one
Right.
if I were put in the seat. But man, in the Sims and stuff, like I have a simulator downstairs and stuff. Nothing major, but just a computer and a joystick. But they're my favorite. I like Boeing commercial planes.
yeah, I hear you.
It's such a shame when I was like, oh man, Boeing, you've let me down.
Yeah, no, I hear you.
Yeah.
But I don't think it's a smoke-filled room kind of thing. I think that this is just it's sort of evolving, if you will, because what the people with the money, what they generally want, what the majority of them want
To make more money.
exactly,
Yeah.
exactly, and so they're supporting things that make them money. They don't
Exactly.
support things that don't make them money. So I don't think it's actually a conspiracy in the sense that they're all getting together in the smoke-filled room and deciding the fate of humanity. I think there is some degree of that, especially when you talk about the Koch brothers, that kind of thing. But for the most part, I think it's just something that has evolved based on the system that we have.
Right.
Which actually, to go back to the regulation thing that we were talking about, I mentioned the Telecommunications Act. I think of '96 or it was in the '90s, whenever it was. In the media outlets, mainstream media outlets, were highly regulated in this in a lot of different ways, and you couldn't build a media empire back then.
Okay.
So we went from having about 50 some odd different media companies to 6, and so now instead of having 50 different voices, we have 6 different voices.
Right.
So that's one of the
6
cases.
different voices that are sponsored by all the same fucking people too.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Exactly. Yeah. I mean, we want to talk about Rupert Murdoch.
And
Is that his name? Rupert.
the big billionaire.
Yeah.
Mhm.
Who owns most of the media in America, England, and Australia, and Oh, by the way, those are the main 3 countries that went to Iraq.
Yeah.
That's a point that Jimmy Dore made, by the way.
Well,
I don't
if
wanna
you
take
think
credit for
about
that.
it, I feel like that's probably one of the major reasons why they're trying to shut down independents like YouTube and Twitch
Exactly.
and stuff. They're trying to make it so that you can't talk about things, and it's working, man.
Yeah,
That-
but yeah, the internet is it was kind of like the last bastion for independent media.
Right.
It was the only bastion for a while. It still is the only bastion, I think. And that's why they're cracking down on it. That's why they want to get rid of net neutrality, so they can throttle things to prevent any new voices from coming up. And
Yeah.
yeah, it's. I mean, I don't think it's a conspiracy, but it's along the same vein.
So I was listening to one of my favorite libertarian commentators is Dave Smith.
Mhm.
And in fact, it was an older episode that I just happened to come up because I listen to podcasts while I sleep now instead of watching TV. I find it, I find I get better sleep now because there's not that
Yeah.
light. That's the main thing is to get rid of the light. But
Well, I want to give you some progressive stuff to go to sleep to. You wake
no,
up
thank
wake up
you.
a progressive.
no, thank you. But
Yeah.
so one of his arguments, which I found kind of interesting,
Mhm.
okay, was, like, yes, that's one of the arguments for net neutrality is, have the government keep the internet providers from censoring.
Yeah.
Which is ironic in a way because if you think about it, the government that is regulating that kind of stuff is the FCC, isn't it?
Yes.
So, and the FCC is famous for
Yes.
for censoring
Yes.
and like keeping people from. That's why they can't cuss on TV and stuff. So, in a way, I see that argument. I think I still favor on the side of net neutrality. I like that idea just because I hate the internet companies, and it's mostly because they don't need to
Yeah.
worry about getting your business. It's like
It's
like a necessity. It's like having a water line.
What
Like
I'm
you
hoping
need
for-
internet these days.
what I'm hoping for in all this. So net neutrality disappears. Okay, and then because that's going to suck for a lot of people. Municipalities, and they've already started doing it, will start providing their own internet.
Yeah, that is possible,
and then,
isn't it?
And then
Did I say this
and then
before? I
these
think I might have.
these service providers that are charging you like crazy, and you only have 1 or 2 of them to choose from.
Uh-huh.
Those disappear.
You know what? Here's what I think. Okay, I think that instead of getting a line to have internet, pretty soon it's going to be wireless, sort of like cell phones
Yeah.
and stuff. Like I think that pretty soon you're just going to have like a modem that is a receiver of
Yeah.
this signal that's in the air, and then like it'll be so much easier for people to get in the game because you don't have to worry about I can't lay my cable in this city because the rights are owned by some other company.
Right.
You know what I mean? So
Mhm.
I think for that it will be easier, and I think that's probably the
I
future.
think we're getting closer and closer
yeah,
to that. Yeah.
there's a major issue with wireless stuff, which is you split the signal instead of it being what you're supposed to get.
Mhm.
Although I think that's what happens now, but that's what I learned in my networking class. I'm a networking major.
So what you learned
give
is that
give
you,
some
you
context
don't
to that.
really, So what you learned is that you don't really know much about it.
Yeah. Not yet. Anyway, I'm
Fantastic.
working on it.
Yeah.
I'll get there. But
I understand that though.
Yeah.
So when you just slightly understand a subject, it's hard to talk on.
sure.
Sometimes.
Yeah. No. Well, look at our podcast. That's why we're just a big clusterfuck.
Right. Yeah.
I want to address something on the last podcast.
Yeah, sure.
That happened, and that was when
Our-
Steve
our
called
heated
me a
argu-
little bitch.
Oh, okay.
Yeah,
Yeah.
and that was wrong. I still stand by like he shouldn't have done that. But
I
at the same time,
I will say
I want to make fun of myself a little bit because I instantly validated his accusation of me being a little bitch. Like I instantly turned in. I'm so mad at myself. Like I said, I listened to all the old ones, and I was so mad at myself. I'm like, God damn it, dude.
Actually, I'm glad you called him out on that. Not because I don't think that.
Well, and I was also a hypocrite because there
I
were
don't-
points where I called him
yeah.
like a fucking dummy and a
I was
fucking
gonna say
idiot.
that.
Yeah,
Yeah,
I
I was
was
gonna
also
say
a
that, yeah.
hypocrite. I'm like, fuck, dude, I got all upset. I'm a hypocrite. I'm a little bitch. I am a little bitch. And like, it's like, damn it, dude.
I thought that was
I
hilarious.
failed
When-
myself
when I
so
heard
hard there.
on the same exact podcast. You called him a fucking idiot.
Dude, you know
And
what?
I wish he had remembered
Emotions. Yes. You're right. You're not wrong, dude.
Yeah, 'cause-
Emotions were high for me on that one, and I think a lot of the time, I felt like it was me versus you guys.
Yeah.
And I think that may have, and not to mention the whole gamer thing is very, like, that's something that I take very personally,
Most-
and I'm
most of
very
that-
passionate about. And so, like, when
Yeah.
you guys are trying to both on me about that, I
think
feel,
that's
I
probably what
felt
the
like
biggest
backed
issue.
into a corner, you know, and then it just kind of it progressed
Most of that
throughout the podcast.
most of that podcast, it was kind
Mhm.
of me and him against you. I mean,
Yeah.
we all kind of trade off here.
We
and
do,
there.
yeah.
But that podcast, for whatever reason, was
It was
just.
just what we were talking about,
Yeah.
man, and that's gonna happen, and it was regrettable.
Mhm.
You know, like I wish I hadn't
It's like
done
when both of you guys
either
were,
of those things.
It's like when both of you guys were against me on the woman that felt insulted when she was.
Oh yeah,
being told-
you were getting a little upset about that
I
too.
was.
yeah.
That was. It's difficult when you have two people that are going against you.
Yeah, it is, man.
Yeah.
Yeah, it really is. I like that format at the same
too.
time
Me too.
because a lot of times I feel like whoever gets Steve on their side, they're the ones that win the
Yes, yeah,
argument,
I
you
know.
know? And so
I have to say I do have respect for that too because Steve is able to, if he hears an argument that convinces him, he'll just be like, okay, I'm on that side now.
yeah,
And that's where I am. And
yeah.
I have huge respect for that.
I
For
think
being able to change your mind.
it's frustrating for me because I feel like probably both of you guys are smarter than me, and so and
I
so
agree with that.
yeah.
Like,
But
you're not exactly an idiot. I mean, you're intelligent as well.
I think, well, so maybe not maybe smarter than me is the wrong term. I think you guys are both more researched than I am.
That's what I
more
was gonna say, is
knowledgeable.
more knowledgeable.
Yeah, I don't know if maybe we're all the same intelligence.
And by
Probably
the
not.
way,
I
it's-
think
it's-
Steve's
it's in-
probably the smartest of all of us.
It's in
But-
certain categories too.
Yeah.
So if we talk about religion, I'm probably gonna blow
You're
I'm gonna
huge,
blow
yeah.
you two away. Just 'cause
Absolutely,
I spent
yeah.
so much time researching it. Whereas once you guys start talking about technical stuff, that's all right.
That's
I'm-
true.
I'm
Yeah,
tapping
it's
out.
all
I'm
about
tapping out.
yeah. You got to leave it to me and
Yeah,
Steve at that point.
Exactly.
Yeah, that's funny.
Mhm.
But yeah, I think that you guys are definitely more researched. However, I am something that I'm very pleased with is my ability to rationalize things and make them logical, present them as a logical argument, and also my ability to dig deeper.
Mhm.
Like, because like I said, a lot of the left likes to go so far to where it supports their point, but doesn't go any further than that as to why. Okay, well, why is that
I'd like
happening?
to say that most people do that in general.
You're right. Yeah,
Most
you're
people.
right.
So it's not even a left
That's-
or right.
yeah,
thing.
you're
It's
right.
Most people do that.
I agree with you. Yeah,
and
I think that's the case.
especially if they're biased in some way. So if there's I remember.
No, good job.
Yeah.
Thank you.
If a person has any kind of bias, for example, they tend to, once they hear something that agrees with their argument, they tend to just run with it,
Uh-huh.
and they don't look deeper. They don't try to find, okay, this might even sound too good to be true. So if it sounds too good to be true, it probably isn't. Most people don't have that thought.
Probably isn't, or probably is.
It probably is not true. If it's
Isn't true. Okay.
yeah, exactly.
Because you confused me because you said if it sounds too good to be true, it probably isn't.
It probably isn't true. Yeah. Sorry.
Let me. Okay, hang on. Let me think. No, let me think about that. Now I've just I want to
So-
focus on this.
So if you come across let's say that you know there's something you really believe in, with gun control or something like that, and then there's this huge shooting that seems to have fit all the categories of what you believe in. Look into it deeper. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Because you could still be wrong. This seems to have supported everything that you've ever believed in. That means you really need to look into it because you're probably wrong. You're probably missing something.
Yeah.
You know, and
You know
most
what?
people don't think that.
I need to take a quick break. So something
I, could
I
use one
want
too.
Oh, okay. Well, it's difficult for us to break since we're live. However, I wanted you to. Well, maybe we could just break. So, I'll put the music, and then we'll come right back. Give us like a minute or two. There's a video I want you to watch. I think
Okay.
it's very important. It has to do with. Do you know who Brett Weinstein is? I think I've tried to tell you.
You've
Before.
told me about him, but I can't remember.
Yeah,
You'll have to
so
remind me.
Brett was a professor at Evergreen University. It was the one
Oh,
where
okay.
they had the day of absence,
Yeah.
and it about it was what's the word I'm thinking of? It was like a reference to a play where the guy wrote a play that showed so all the black people didn't show up one day, right? And it showed the effect that had on the community, on the society, you know, like just like, okay, wow, we need black people, you know what I mean?
Sort of the idea behind it was to give people an understanding of how important black people
Sure.
were to their lives, essentially.
And so Evergreen University did this thing where they would that the black people for one day of college just absent themselves from the university just to kind of iterate that point, to kind of make the point that the play makes when that would happen. And one year, this was maybe 2 years ago now. It was a while ago.
2-3 years ago.
Yeah,
I think
no,
3 years
not
ago.
no. 3 is way too long. I think it was while I was in
Okay,
SPG.
now it's 4 years ago.
Okay, yeah, well, there you go. But so what happened is the black community on campus decided that instead of us absenting ourselves, white people need to not show up this day. And then he disagreed with that because he found that racist. You know, like his point was, and maybe I could.
Was it him that objected to it first?
It might have been.
I think
he wrote a letter.
I think it was the community. I think
no, it was him.
Okay.
It was him. He wrote a letter.
I know he wrote a letter.
And this,
but,
you know what?
yeah.
This is interesting. This was when I think this was a key moment in my decision. I wouldn't call it a decision, maybe realization of I'm no longer on the left.
Mm-hmm.
And it had to do with because this community, like it kind of highlighted to me the type of culture that we are in today, and this victimhood mentality, this outrage culture, which I'm also very much opposed to, and like I remember watching it up on Philip DeFranco. I think I keyed you in on Philip, right? I think
Little bit.
yeah, okay. So I remember him presenting this thing, and like Philip was talking about, so this guy, he's been banned from campus or something. He wasn't banned from campus, but you get my point. Like he's been shunned from campus or whatever because of this letter that he wrote. And right away I'm getting amped up. I'm like, oh, who's this guy I'm gonna hate? What racist thing did he did? I'm getting angry and I'm ready to get outraged, right? I'm ready.
So you were a part of the outrage.
Absolutely,
culture.
I was.
Okay.
Yeah, for sure.
Okay.
And so he like, and then he's like, and then he says the letter and he's like, yeah, it's all bullshit. And I'm like, whoa, like that was one of my big realization moments where I'm like, oh shit, like, okay, so people aren't always racist. Like he's even anti-racist. Like that's his claim.
Yeah.
But he actually talked to Congress recently. He addressed like a congressional hearing.
If we can, let's go into what his position was.
So his position was that it's one thing for a particular group to absent themselves from thing, but for them to decide that another group can't show up, that's inherently racist. It's particularly when these groups are racial groups. So that was his position. He got shunned from the campus community. The campus doubled down on all these policies, and in fact, he'll get into the financial trouble and stuff that they're causing, but really this highlights kind of what I'm talking about. And that's actually like, it's what's driven me from being a fan of the Philip DeFranco show anymore. Like I still use it every day to get my news on cultural things, on what's going on in the world.
No,
He's a pretty objective presenter for the most part. I think he's a little bit more biased to the left, which is fine. Like I don't have a problem with that. Where I don't like is that there's been a couple instances. The dog's
There's a dog here.
Yeah.
Scared the hell out of me.
Okay, Gigi, you gotta go. Hang on, we'll get her out of here on the break.
We could take her out of that break. Yeah.
So he freaked me out, man. I was like, "What happened?" I thought you got stung by a bee or something. What was I saying though?
Oh man,
Gigi, you gotta go, dude. But what was I saying?
I wish the camera had been on me for that
Oh
moment.
yeah,
Oh,
God, that scared me a little. But I forget what I was saying now. Do you remember?
Not entirely, but I mean, you said that you have a video you want to watch.
Yeah, eventually. We'll take a break first. But
Sure.
what was it? It was I was saying something about like about like how outrage called. Oh yeah, there's been a couple times where Philip DeFranco has like talked about things that were just outrage culture. Like that's all it was, and he's become sort of a platform for outrage culture. Like he'll take these stories that really shouldn't. Like I don't know if you knew about the one where the girl on Twitter that wore a Chinese dress to her prom, and people got pissed about it. And like this fucking idiot named Jeremy Lamb, I think is his name. He's he's an Asian guy. I don't know what specific part of Asia he's from, but
name sounds
yeah.
familiar.
But he put my culture is not your goddamn prom dress. It's like, give me a fucking break, dude. You know, like
Yeah, I don't know. I'm not in favor of that. It's like
if she's disrespecting it or something, okay, you know, you may have a point.
Yeah, that's one.
But
thing.
just wearing it to prom, like, isn't that kind of like embracing your culture, like saying, hey, like, you know, this is cool. You know, this is what I like. This looks good. You know, like you're making it a common thing. You know what I mean? So it's definitely.
I get what you're saying. Yeah.
Yeah, he got all in. Like there were plenty of people that backed him up. But that also, I mean, thankfully, there was also people that are like, "Dude, you're retarded." You know?
Yeah, I mean, just wearing it. I mean, what's the problem?
There isn't one.
See, I never understood that. Especially, like, I remember hearing about the outrage of people who would, you know, on Halloween would dress up with the Mexican with the huge sombrero and the
Right.
massive mustache and stuff like that. It's like, well, number one, it's Halloween.
Yeah.
Number two, I mean, this is like a
And, like,
racist thing.
like
This is
how
just-
they're,
that's
like-
a costume.
Yeah, and like how they're opposed to white people wearing dreadlocks, like how that's some kind of cultural appropriation too.
I'm against
you know?
that too, but
Really? Why?
Purely for aesthetic reasons.
Oh well,
Yeah.
yeah, there you go. But
Yeah.
not because it's like it's not appropriating anyone's
exactly.
culture. That's
Which
ridiculous.
is kind of funny because I like dreadlocks on a black person.
Yeah, there you go. Okay, well, I'm ready for our break. I'll
Yeah,
go
me
ahead and
too.
cue the music. You guys enjoy this song while we take a quick break. We'll see you in just a few minutes.
I hope you find the sun someday wrapped in a blanket blue. But please don't say you're feeling low when it snows in Georgia too. Your heart it longs for knowing, and I know it's hard for you to imagine any comfort when you're only passing through. 500 days since I looked into my soul. 500 ways that I tumble back in the hole. I wanna rip my script apart. I wanna love you where you are. I just don't know. 'Cause when we fight, it starts feeling like 500 nights alone. I'd heard your story once before, already knew your tune, but it didn't ease the aching, babe, when up again you flew. Your heart it longs for loving, but you think too much to choose any offering of comfort when you're only passing through. 500 days since I looked into my soul. 500 ways that I tumble back in the hole. I someday and all your dreams turn out. You used to sing, you had me, babe, before you shut your mouth. But I still hear that voice in little songs above my house. I'm just stuck inside that melody. Birds are flying south. Stuck inside the melody, and birds are flying south.
All right, we're back. I forgot to turn on the mics for a second.
And I closed the door so I can't be scared to death.
Yeah,
by
there we
dogs.
go. Okay, so let's check out this video. Because this, let me think of what it does. This kind of just illustrates where the left is, maybe, because Brett Weinstein is still on the left. But he, like, this is his experience. This is what the left is doing. And as he puts it, and I think you might appreciate this even a little, is he'll put it as there's two parts of the left. There's like the classic left, and then there's the new thing. And he
I'll agree with that.
Yeah, he
same
better.
Thing, same thing with
Right.
feminism.
Yeah. Oh, absolutely. Yeah. Okay. So let's go ahead and check this out. I think this is the correct button. Yep. And here we go.
Invitation to address you. Tomorrow is the one-year anniversary of the day 50 Evergreen students that I had never met, disrupted my class, accusing me of racism and demanding my resignation. I tried to reason with them. I felt no fear because I knew that whatever my failings might be, bigotry was not among them. At that moment, I felt sure I could reach them. I also felt a moral obligation to try. That racism squanders human potential and erodes human dignity offends me. I am also well versed in the evolutionary logic that makes racism durable. I should have had no trouble establishing common ground. Their response surprised me. It would take months for me to fully understand what had happened. The protesters had no apparent interest in the very dialogue they seemed to invite. I was even more surprised by the protesters' fervor in shouting down my actual students, some of whom had known me for years. The cruelty and derision reserved for students of color who spoke in my defense was particularly troubling. If not discussion, what did they want? I was one of Evergreen's most popular professors. I had Evergreen's version of tenure. Did they really think they could force my resignation based on a meritless accusation? They did think that, and they were right. What I had not counted on was their alliance with Evergreen's new president. Though the protesters openly humiliated him, the president of the college partnered with the mob in private, handing them concession after concession. We know this because the rioters filmed everything and proudly uploaded it. In one particularly telling video, the president calmly discusses with the leaders of the protest a demand to target STEM faculty based on the empty assertion that scientists are particularly prone to bias. In that same video, the president speaks of his plan for those who resist the new order. Bring them in, train them, and if it doesn't take, sanction them. He invites his partners to hold him to it. On the second day of unrest, the police chief called me. Rioters were stopping traffic and searching for someone, car to car. The chief believed they were searching for me. She was worried for my safety and helpless to protect me, as the president had ordered her force to stand down. What would have transpired if the rioters had found me? I still don't know, and I strongly suspect they don't either. The protest at my class did not emerge out of the blue in May of 2017. 1 year earlier, I stood up and spoke in opposition to a dangerous proposal, one that threatened to establish a racial hierarchy amongst faculty. To those who have not faced something similar, this likely sounds hyperbolic. But one can now advance such policies and almost certainly succeed in passing them if they are properly draped in weaponized terminology. Equity, for example, has taken on special properties. If a person opposes an equity proposal, those advancing the proposal are secure in asserting that the person is motivated by opposition to racial equity itself. In other words, they are racist. My opposition to that first equity proposal was voiced to my colleagues with no students present. Demands for my resignation 1 year later, in May of 2017, were not the result of organic student confusion. They were payback for violating a de facto code of faculty conduct in which one's right to speak is now dictated by adherence to an ascendant orthodoxy in which one's race, gender, and sexual orientation are paramount. The students were on a mission. They were unwitting tools of a witting movement. This committee should take my tale as cautionary. Is there a free speech crisis on college campuses? One can certainly make that argument, but that portrayal is at least as misleading as it is informative. What is occurring on college campuses is about power and control. Speech is impeded as a last resort, used when people or groups fail to self-censor in response to a threat of crippling stigma and the destruction of their capacity to earn. These tools are being used to unhook the values that bind us together as a nation: equal protection under the law, the presumption of innocence, a free marketplace of ideas, the concept that people should be judged by the content of their character rather than the color of their skin. Yes, even that core tenet of the civil rights movement is being dismantled. Am I alleging a conspiracy? No. What I have seen functions much more like a cult, in which the purpose is only understood by the leaders, and the rest have been seduced into a carefully architected fiction. Most of the people involved in this movement earnestly believe that they are acting nobly to end oppression. Only the leaders understand that the true goal is to turn the tables of oppression. Something is seriously and dangerously amiss. At this moment in history, the center does not hold. Partisan polarization and political corruption have rendered government ineffective, predatory, and often cruelly indifferent to the suffering of American citizens. Tribalism is the natural result. Evergreen's public meltdown placed me in the eye of the storm and cast me into the spotlight. As a member of the intellectual dark web, I find myself at the vanguard of an emerging, non-ideological, non-partisan movement. Along with the Heterodox Academy and the Foundation for Individual Rights in Education, we are fighting to restore civility and respect for competing perspectives. The electorate is starved for honest debate and for the good governance that follows from it. My advice to this body is to put the nation and its core values ahead of partisanship and join us in the center to end this cultish power grab and return us to a forward path as a nation. I look forward to your questions.
What has been the reaction to what happened to you, both on campus and off campus? Have any changes been made?
The campus has doubled down on every foolish idea it was pursuing and has gotten itself into very serious financial trouble for lack of students, which I should tell you, I warned my colleagues that if they pursued this false equity proposal, that would be the result. So a rather predictable disaster is occurring on campus. I do want to push back a little bit, though, on the assessment that it is the left, because really it isn't one left. There is an ascendant orthodoxy on the left that is very troubling. It is quite broad, but I think not very deep. Then there's a concentrated mirror image of that on the far right, and both of these things are to be feared. The problem, though, is when you speak out on a college campus from a perspective on the left that does not fit this orthodoxy, you are immediately categorized as on the right, which makes it look that the left is monolithic and all shares this opinion, but it's not the case.
Dr. Weinstein, what happened in your classroom, which I've seen videos of, was your classroom that day a safe space or a free speech zone or neither?
Thank you for asking me that question. A safe space
Didn't look like it was safe to me.
Well, I believe in something that could be called a safe space. But what safe space means to me as an educator is a space safe enough to take risks, which is roughly the opposite meaning of what is being invoked on college campuses. The answer to your question is that a free speech zone cannot coexist with a safe space, because a safe space, by definition, according to this orthodoxy, is a place where you are free from being offended. So it cannot, it is mutually exclusive. But if you would allow me to, I feel that there's
in a safe space, could you say this sentence? Could you say, Donald Trump is President of the United States? Could you say that in a safe space on college campuses today?
Well, it depends which version of safe space you mean. If you mean a safe space the way it is used in common parlance on college campuses today, then the question of whether or not you can say it is contingent on whether or not somebody will be offended by that observation.
Now think about that. You can't even state a fact, provable, right? I saw his tweet this morning. It's provable. He's the president, right?
Mr. Chairman.
So you cannot do that. This shows the absurdity of what is going on campuses, and you have lived it in a physical way. Dr. Stanger has lived it in a physical way. This is what is scary. Dr. Stanger is raising her head. Mr. Weinstein, you have the floor, so you'd have to yield time to her. But
you don't have to.
Okay. I think this is important enough to warrant a minute or two. We are continuing in this hearing to run up against the bluntness of the tool that we have at our disposal for discussing the issue at hand. So there is an importance to what takes place on a college campus. Free expression is a key feature of what takes place on college campuses that makes civilization function. But the application of the First Amendment to that free expression is almost arbitrary. Does it matter more that something takes place at Evergreen, which happens to be public, than if it takes place at Harvard, which happens to be private? Do those distinctions even make any sense when fully 80% of the funding that drives Evergreen is private tuition money, and I don't know what fraction, but a very large fraction of what drives Harvard is NIH and NSF money? So these distinctions are arbitrary, and what we should be protecting is the ability to exchange ideas in a way that actually allows education. It is also true that when people self-censor because they're afraid of stigma, they may never get around to the place where somebody blocks their speech, and so there may be no technical violation, but nonetheless the effect is exactly the same. There is also a problem in the sense that the conflict is really between members of the audience. One section of the audience is deciding what other members of the audience can listen to. Yep. The person's speech who is inhibited is almost beside the point. It's a question of whether you can choose what you want to entertain as a concept. And then when this jumps the fence and leaves the college campuses and moves into the outer world, we're going to run into an even bigger problem, where the tech sector is now the de facto governance apparatus for the new public square, and it's private, so the First Amendment doesn't apply.
Take the example of Harvard, which you talked about, Dr. Weinstein, whether it's DOD funds, whether it's NIH funds, or whether it's Pell Grant funding. There are so many federal dollars that underpin the way Harvard functions and their budget on an annual basis. And the fact that the university can penalize students because they join an outside organization, zero affiliation with Harvard. They're not allowed to be sports captains. They're not allowed to be considered for fellowships. And I think that is a significant overstep of the university's role. I wanted to give other panelists an opportunity to respond. Dr. Weinstein.
Well, the first thing to say is I'm not a legal expert, but I would certainly support the idea that leverage generated by the funding that is given by the federal government would morally be justified to use that to make sure that college campuses protect the free expression. But I would also point out that this is not just a matter of abstract ideas presented by speakers on campus. This is now extending into the classroom, and it's a question of what one can properly teach in a biology class, for example, which may well not be politically correct, but is nonetheless necessary for students to understand the organism that they're studying. So ultimately, this is going to manifest in our competitiveness as a nation. If we decide that there are certain things that are true in science that can't be stated in a college classroom, then our students will be undereducated relative to any nation that can solve that problem. So this is really a critical issue, and the use of those funds to keep the campus square open is entirely valid, in my opinion.
What can we do so we're not having these ridiculous PC controversies for the rest of our lives, so we can really try to work out some good ground rules? Yes, Dr. Weinstein.
So there's a natural tension between the duty of a college or university to curate the content so that the students are encountering things that enrich them, and its duty to guard freedom of expression. And I think we just should be honest about the fact that that tension exists. I mean, peer review does shut down viewpoints that aren't deemed of a high quality, and that we don't commonly take that to be an infringement of free speech. As to your question about the effect of something like the University of Chicago letter, I must say that there's a paradox here for those who espouse a libertarian economic perspective, which is the Chicago letter would seem to protect freedom of expression better than any other campus in the nation that I'm aware of. That presumably will give students who go there a competitive edge because they will have been exposed to challenging ideas and will have sharpened their toolkit in response. And so why is that letter not spreading? Why are college campuses not falling all over themselves to embrace this in order to collect those students who are looking for a college campus that will expose them to the highest quality material available? So I don't know the answer to that question, but I do find it interesting that Chicago was able to articulate these things and survive it, and other colleges have not embraced the same principles.
We really don't prepare most college faculty to be good instructors in that sense. It hadn't dawned on me until I had the good fortune for the most part of having that. It hadn't dawned on me until he said that. Sure, absolutely. Dr. Weinstein, what can you suggest?
Well, let me add something to that. He's quite right that we don't train people to teach, and we also never spell out that the job of an educator is to teach you how to think, not what to think. So the fact that somebody at the front of the room happens to have a perspective that they hold dear shouldn't mean that they are attempting to transmit it to students wholesale. They should give them the tools to evaluate for themselves. Unfortunately, what we are seeing is the result of the politicization of the commons, effectively. And I suspect that that's the result of two things, which is that people do not feel well represented by the governance apparatus, and of the fact that they feel a threat of austerity, which is causing them to be tribal. So if you really want to address this problem, people have to understand that they have more to gain by being patriotic together than by fighting each other for scraps. And I can't see a way around this. The First Amendment is simply not sufficient to protect the free exchange of ideas in the private sector. It's not sufficient to protect it on college campuses that don't happen to be public, and it's actually not especially useful on public campuses where it doesn't deal with issues like censorship or self-censorship.
Okay.
Mr. Chairman, distinguished members of the committee.
All right, thank you, Brett. So, I
mean,
mean,
one thing has to be said that it would have been nice if the woman that was sitting behind him had like opened her legs or something. But
okay.
I know there were people watching that too.
I wasn't.
Yeah,
I'll be honest.
I don't even know if she was pretty or anything, but I couldn't help but notice and be watching it the whole time.
Okay.
All right. Anyway,
Me Too movement for her. Well, Chris, you're going to be called upon to be fired soon from this podcast because of that insensitive comment. Frankly, I am appalled that you would even suggest that woman that you objectify, that woman that was in that video. I didn't say it was
sexual. I just said I wanted her to do it.
I think that the presumption that it was sexual is probably pretty.
There may have been a little bit of an implication there.
Okay.
Okay. So
that's the current state of like the college campus atmosphere. It's like you have to go along with the common narrative. Like people on the right are subjected to, just you can't think that way.
There's one thing I want to. I think we're mostly going to agree on this, but there is one thing I wanted to mention that I disagree with what he said.
Okay.
And that was that that the leadership essentially was cultish. I get what he's saying there, in that they're adhering to a particular ideology or ideal or whatever it is.
Well, in this instance, it probably was.
Well, what I'm thinking, though, is it's not that they were adhering to it because they felt it was important. I think that they were adhering to it because they felt it would be better for their college. You see what I'm saying? Their university. And this is
they were wrong then.
No, I agree with that. No, and this happens all the time. It's like if, a matter of fact, if I can make an analogy with the Catholic Church. So the Catholic Church would have been much better off if it had actually all the all the pedophile priests and all that, if they had taken those priests and took them to the police and actually did something to punish them instead of taking them from one parish to another parish to another parish to where they could keep on.
Right.
The idea behind that is, oh, well, we don't want to prosecute these people because that makes our church look bad. Well, now your church looks really fucking horrible. And I think it's just the same thing here. They were trying to save face, and they did the opposite.
Okay, then let me pose an interesting question to you.
Yeah.
Why do you think they were trying? Like, what were they trying to save face from? Is it that common group think that like, well, you have to cater to black people? I mean, like, look, I don't care if you cater to black people, but what I'm saying is like this is. I feel like you and I have a lot more. We have a lot more ways to agree than we do disagree. I think you and I probably think alike more than not.
Yeah.
Now we disagree on a lot of things, but I think that could a lot have to do with our perspective, right? Like what I've seen, like I've engulfed myself in this kind of, okay, this is what's happening, and this is dangerous. It's very dangerous because look where it's going to lead. You know what I mean? Like, look what these kids are leaving college. Like, these are the ones that are going to shape the future. And they're leaving college thinking that kind of behavior is acceptable. And not only is it acceptable, it's what you should be thinking.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
What I like about this is that any time something like this comes up, I like the outrage.
Yeah.
Okay?
Well, the outrage culture is useful in some senses
because it creates the conversation.
Sure.
So I think we're evolving.
This didn't get much coverage. You didn't know
this
about
in particular. No, the only reason I ever heard about this was
because of me.
Because I was a fan of the Young Turks back when it happened, so, and they did talk about it.
What was their stance? Their stance was probably on the side of the faculty, wasn't it?
I don't think they had a full stance, if I remember right. It's hard to say. I mean, I was a big fan of them back then. I am not anymore.
Right, for good reasons.
Yes, for very good reasons. In my opinion, obviously.
Sure.
I don't know. It's interesting because there's some of it where I see both sides on the black-white issue as far as the day of absence. When you start talking about safe spaces and that kind of thing, I'm not in favor of safe spaces, I don't think.
Why are you okay with this day of absence?
I'm not necessarily okay with it. I see both sides. You see what I'm saying?
Okay, well, go ahead and elaborate.
All right, so I get the idea behind the original day of absence.
Sure, yeah, I'm fine with.
Yeah, and I also get why, people were wanting to try it the other way. See, kind of like an experiment.
Well, then it's the way that you approach it. Right.
Yes. Yeah. Absolutely.
Yeah. You can't make that decision though. You can't be like, okay, you guys are not. You know what I mean? Like you can't force that.
Matter of fact, this is one thing I wanted to point out because this is something I do remember the Young Turks talking about. And so I don't know how solid this is or anything, but the idea at the time, and this is the impression that I got, and the impression that they got because they specifically said this, it's not that people were being forced to not go to college on that day of absence. It was kind of more of a choice, if you will. Now, I don't know how solid that is.
Yeah, I don't know either. Obviously, the faculty was behind it, so that says something, right? Like you can take that as you will. And
I mean, obviously,
they would be the ones that would be.
You give me a choice.
Could enforce something.
You give me a choice. I'm not showing up.
Fuck.
Yeah. Well, you know what I mean? Like a day of absence from work or whatever it is.
Yeah.
Yeah, I'm gone. Yeah, no problem. Voluntary time off.
I don't know. For school, it's
fantastic.
All right, now we have no light.
Yeah.
For school, it's different for me because
are we still live and everything?
We are.
Okay, good.
We just don't have a light. We may have to take a break and fix it. I just went out.
Yeah.
It just went out. But yeah, because you can't see me at all now.
This is a podcast.
This is this is great.
Of darkness.
God fucking damn it, dude. The one time we go live,
right,
you know,
right.
And like we have to keep going.
Well,
There's no stopping.
Proof it's live. Unless
for sure.
we did that on purpose to make it seem like
we sure didn't. God damn it, man. But
here's the thing. So
well, for me,
go ahead.
What was I gonna say?
You didn't know what you were going to say, but you stopped me from saying what I wanted to say.
Yeah, go ahead.
Here's the thing. I love free speech.
Oh, I remember what I was going to say.
Go ahead.
Sorry. It was that for school it's different because you're paying to be there.
Mm-hmm.
So if you're taking a day off, like you're killing yourself there.
Yes.
You know what I mean? Whereas like from work and stuff, like you're being paid to get there, which I guess in a way is also hurting yourself. But I enjoy my time off.
Right.
You know, but if I'm paying to be somewhere, like it's like paying for a gym that you don't go to.
Well, if I remember right, it was so the original one was a day of absence of all black people. So it wasn't just students. It was.
But it was a choice.
People.
It was a choice.
People working in the cafeteria, that kind of thing. And that was actually one of the biggest issues with the day of absence for the white people, is because they're the majority. Is that you're not going to be able to get the services that you need, sort of thing. Like that's too big of an impact. You know, if none of the white people are in the cafeteria, who's going to get to eat that day, sort of thing. I don't know. I see this whole thing on safe spaces. I can't. I both understand it and can't stand the concept at the same time, and I don't know where I line up on this, because I think the most important aspect of college is the free speech, the free exchange of ideas.
Yeah,
and I love people being forced to hear things they don't want to hear.
Well, forced is a bit harsh, but you know what I mean. You know,
like you said, you're paying to go there,
right? But you're not forced to be there though. Like, so
exactly.
I don't know. I'm arguing an arbitrary point in my, for me, but like I don't think you're forced to hear things. Like if you don't want to hear it, you're welcome to leave the classroom or whatever.
Oh, of course.
But why don't we take a quick break and fix our lighting issue, and then we won't do a full song this time. We'll just do until I get it fixed. So be right back, guys. Sorry about this.
He just wants to be able to see his own face on camera.
Well, I want people to be able to see.
The sun someday wrapped in a blanket blue. But please don't say you're feeling low when it snows in Georgia too. Your heart, it longs for knowing, and I know it's hard for you to imagine any comfort when you're only passing through. 500 days since I looked into my soul. 500 ways that I tumble back in the hole. I wanna rip my script apart. I wanna love you where you are. I just don't know. 'Cause when we fight, it starts feeling like 500 nights alone. I'd heard your story once before, already knew your tune, but it didn't ease the aching, babe, when up again you flew. Your heart, it longs for loving, but you think too much to choose any offering of comfort when you're only passing through. 500 days since I looked into my soul. sun someday and all your dreams turn out. You used to sing, you had me, babe, before you shut your mouth. But I still hear that voice in little songs above my house. I'm just stuck inside that melody. Birds are flying south. Stuck inside the
All right, we're back.
Sorry about that, folks.
And you can see me. How about that?
Yeah.
Oh, close the door.
Oh, yep. We did fire the lighting man.
Yeah.
He said something racist.
Oh, yep. We got outraged. All right. So, yeah, I don't remember. God, in a lot of ways, I think this is one of our better podcasts, but it's definitely one of our worst as far as technical.
Well, I mean, it's just the two of us, and
yeah,
and Steve has good luck.
Maybe that's what it is.
Brings good luck.
It could be that, yeah. So,
I'm just happy I'm being disciplined on my alcohol drinking. So
clearly,
I'm not getting drunk. I'm just.
I feel like you drank more than never.
Huh?
I feel like you've been more on it than ever, but I could be. I haven't paid much attention to it in the past. But yeah, so that's my fear, man. Is like if people are indoctrinated into these ideas that are net negative, and
I have less fear of indoctrination in college. Only because the people are older and less likely to be indoctrinated. So
I don't know, man. I think it's been effective. I think it's really been effective. Like if
in
you
what
look
way,
at,
though?
Well, look at all these protests for like speakers at college campuses. Like when Ben Shapiro goes to speak, or like when Milo Yiannopoulos goes to speak, or that anybody that's considered on the right. Dave Rubin these days gets heavily.
I wouldn't say, it wouldn't surprise me.
Well, I mean, they people show up and they, oh my God, it drives you crazy. Like you watch these what would you call it? Like a speaking or like a presentation, a lecture. There you go. Yeah, you watch these lectures on YouTube, and there's people that show up and they just start chanting. You know what I mean? Like they'll say the same retarded thing over and over again, and they're trying to silence the person that's there that other people have gone to try to show up and just listen to, and it infuriates me. It really does. It's like and everybody handles it so graciously, really. Like they just kind of wait it out and I feel like those people should be removed.
The thing is, I think that these people, the people who wind up getting all the outrage about somebody coming onto campus, I think they're a minority.
You think so?
I
don't know, man.
It's what we call the very loud minority.
You're right. Yeah. Okay, that I could agree with.
Yeah. So it's not to say that they don't get what they want sometimes and that sort of thing, but I don't think that it's the majority of students, and that this is why I don't think it's as big of an issue. As it may seem sometimes. Yeah. I'm in favor of letting anybody talk. I don't care. I don't care if it's a Ku Klux Klan member.
I agree. Yeah,
I really don't care. Because I want, especially in college, I want a free exchange of all ideas.
Sure,
all ideas, except for religious ones. No, I'm kidding. No, even that.
For sure, there are genuine people that feel that they're of another gender, and we can get into that debate as to whether or not that's true. But, what is?
I think this is a part of our culture. I think in large part, for one thing, I think it's a part of being human.
Sure.
That there's something in us that wants to be a victim in some way, and to overcome it.
I don't know. I don't know if that's true. I think that also, today's culture, it's kind of glorified, and you're kind of like put on a sort of pedestal. Because if you're in one of these victimized groups, really, you think so? Okay,
because this kind of thing has been going on for a long time, and this is specifically in Christianity. There's a very specific thing that, and I don't remember how it's worded or anything, but you're warned as a Christian that people are going to ridicule you, they're going to criticize you, that kind of thing, and that just means that you're being a good Christian or something like that. And I think that there's a part of that has also melded into our culture in general. Because we have a mostly Christian nation, and that's a big part of it, is that it's almost like they want to be the victim.
Who does?
This is Christians.
Christians want to be a victim.
Yes, they want to be a victim because it tells them you're going to be. If you're a good Christian, you're going to be a victim in a way. This is actually in the Bible. And I don't think that anybody consciously thinks that.
Okay.
But it is something that...
Well, there's a lot of people that do.
Yes. Yeah, that too.
Those people are the problem. Like these people that are like trying to be good Christians. I mean,
well, I think the whole victimhood thing is
well,
is
yeah,
a problem.
okay, that I might agree with. But as far as I don't know if I can get on board. Like, you know, as far as like religious things, you're going to be a victim because you're standing up for that person that's getting persecuted or whatever, or you're effectively you're doing good things to and then people are gonna to victimize you for doing the right thing in a sense.
That's not quite what I meant by that. But
okay, well, what did you mean?
This is why I think it was put into the Bible. All right,
okay.
So if you're a very strong believer, okay, and you express those beliefs, and obviously as a Christian, you're supposed to spread that belief to other people to try to save their souls, that kind of thing. Unless you just toss the whole fucking thing out. You come across someone like me, who I don't come up to people and start talking to them about their religion. But if you come up to me and start talking to me about your religion, then I'm going to tell you what I think about it, and I'm going to criticize it. I'm going to ridicule it, and you're probably going to feel like crap, and you're going to feel like a victim, sort of thing. And the idea, I believe, or why they put that in the Bibles, that is going to happen to you, and that's a good thing because that means you're serving God.
I see what you mean. But so I see what you're doing, you sneaky bastard. You're trying to steer this towards a religious debate.
Not trying to steer
but
it. I think it's relevant.
Here's the difference. Okay, I could see that, but here's the difference. I think is in one thing you are like that's built into the system, sort of way. On the other hand, like if you're doing a I'm transgender as a fad sort of thing, you're adopting victimhood, whereas the other way around, like somebody is kind of, I think there's a bit of a difference is what I'm trying to say. I can't maybe articulate it as well as I probably would like to right now, but do you see what I'm saying though?
Yeah, to a certain degree.
Yeah.
I think there is something instinctual about us that it's not that we want to be a victim. We want to be a victim who's overcoming it. You know what I mean? You feel like you're. It's like you want to win the fight. Yeah. It doesn't matter if you're in a fight or not. You still want to win a fight.
Right.
You know what I mean? And I think it's a very similar thing. Is that you want to feel like you are a victim, so that you can overcome this problem. And if it's a made-up problem, it's easier to overcome it, right? See what I'm saying?
Yeah. Okay.
Does that make sense?
In a way, yeah.
Yeah. I mean, I'm not obviously a psychology expert or anything like that, but I think there's some degree of that.
Okay.
And I think it's an instinctual thing. It's in almost everybody does this to some degree.
I can't stand it. I try to avoid it. I do. I mean, like I'm sure I've claimed victimhood.
I think you do it too. But I think everybody does it to some degree.
For sure.
Yeah.
But there's
another thing you need to be aware of.
Right, there you go. Okay.
Yeah.
That's an actual useful awareness. That's an interesting thing. Yeah. That could bring me to a point where, I tried to last time establish how I don't believe white privilege or the concept of white privilege is effective. And I tried to illustrate how it kind of alienates people that maybe don't necessarily feel privileged, and what I really want to hit on, because I actually got into a nice discussion with a young black man at Drill last weekend. I talked to him about the stuff I talked to on this podcast, and I, like I said, I don't find myself racist at all. I like it when I can engage people with these kinds of ideas, and how I think that maybe there's these regressive ideas on the left, particularly when it comes to minorities and people that they say are oppressed, and one of them is that I think that being a victim or feeling like a victim isn't productive. In fact, it's the opposite. And
if you focus on it, I agree.
Right. Yeah. And I think that the concept of white privilege enables that. I do. I think that that's the case. I think that, one of the things that I was listening to Dan Carlin, fantastic podcast. He has a history podcast, and then he also has one that's like kind of like a political. It's more of a
relation to George Carlin.
No, in fact, he's not. But you wouldn't be able to tell, man. Like you would think, just listening to him, he sounds like his fucking brother. I swear to God, it's actually really hilarious.
Okay.
But he talks about how like the state of self-pity is one of the least productive places to be in. It doesn't help you. And when you have someone to blame for your problems, it puts you in this state of what's the word I'm trying to think of? Like you're not moving forward perpetuity in that state where you're just like you're stagnant, right? And it doesn't. And also, when you have somebody to blame, you can just sit and wallow in that self-pity and not worry about moving forward. Well, the reason I'm here is because of this, instead of just trying to overcome it and trying to move forward. And honestly, I think that that's a huge reason as to why. And
why it bothers you so much? Or?
No, not why it bothers me. Why the black population is so, as far as on the financial scale and like the impoverished scale, they represent a large portion of the impoverished community. And I think that, like that, and for like it's not illegitimate, right? Like they for sure they were persecuted. For sure they did go through rough patches. You know what I mean? Like that's not illegitimate. But right now, I don't think it is. I don't think it's legitimate right now. Do you know what I'm saying? And I think that also, this outside view of the way that, what you might consider white privilege, like some of the things where you might be able to identify, oh, well, this is white privilege and this why this happened, this way. It may be because of the way that the black community represents itself in society, right? So like, it's statistically true. You can pull it up on the FBI's analysis of crime that black people are much more likely to commit crimes, and so they may be prejudged in it, like you say.
The only thing
based
is,
off of that common knowledge. I don't know if I want to call it common knowledge. I don't like to generalize. That's something I hate doing. But
I just want to mention something on the statistics. So here's the thing. I'm willing to accept that, like, black people in general commit more crimes and that kind of thing. But the problem with using those statistics, though, is they're all based on conviction rates and that sort of thing.
Okay, that's a fair point.
And so when you consider just as an example, what was the something Park 5 or what Jackson Park 5? You recognize that?
Sounds familiar, but the Jackson 5 is Michael Jackson and his brother's music group.
Oh, okay, yeah. I don't know. There's some 5 guys or whatever that were accused of a murder of some kind, and this is back in the past. But Donald Trump was saying, okay, you need to. These people need the death penalty, that sort of thing, and they were acquitted because there was evidence that proved they were innocent.
Okay.
And then someone like Donald Trump, for example, said they still should have been. I still think they did it. I still, there's a bias among a lot of people against black people, so they're more likely to get.
Yeah, but where does that come from? This goes into the diving deeper.
I don't care where it came from.
You're right. It's inherently wrong.
It's there.
That's right.
That's why I'm saying.
You're right.
That's why I'm saying you can't trust the statistics because it's there. Whatever. The reason why it's there is not necessarily important to that point.
Right, because I mean, if you want to go along my favorite ideology, which is treating everyone as individuals, then this stuff shouldn't happen. At the same time, we are human, and we'll do human things, which is like basing threat levels off of like stereotypes and that kinds of things. Like that's not. So what I'm saying is that doesn't necessarily make you racist. You know what I mean? Like. But it's kind of like a safety thing. It's a self-preservation thing.
So the person who is more likely to convict a black person than a white person, I don't think that person is racist, but they are prejudiced.
Okay, what do you mean?
And that's what the difference is.
What do you mean when like a person that would more likely to convict them?
So, as a matter of fact, so one, just to put this in perspective, one good thing the Young Turks did do back in the day.
Yeah.
This is around the time of the Trayvon Martin shooting, if you remember that.
Yeah.
And they really helped me to kind of wake up to my own biases. They did this series of photos where they showed people of different races, of different sexes, all wearing, very similar clothing, very similar photos. And they said, what do you think of this person? What do you think of this person? What do you think of this person? I was like, holy shit. I really am looking at the black person in a totally different way than I am from anybody else.
Yeah.
And,
okay, yeah.
And that's one of the things that really woke me up, which, by the way, most people have not had that moment where they're like, oh, my God, I'm doing this too. And so I was prejudiced in that way. I was prejudging people, even though it wasn't like a full judgment. I'm not saying you're guilty, but in my mind, I would suspect you of being guilty. You see what I'm saying?
Sure.
As a matter of fact, even in the Trayvon Martin shooting, when I first heard about somebody mentioned to me about the controversy, and my immediate reaction was that I said, Trayvon Martin, he must have done something. He wouldn't have just gotten shot for doing nothing. But yeah, he did do nothing. This guy stalked him.
Do we know that for sure?
Yeah.
I don't know. I haven't followed the case very well.
Yeah.
I mean, like, there's no video evidence or anything, right? That's kind of...
So what happened, I'll just lay it out real quick.
Sure.
So George Zimmerman, neighborhood watch guy, decided he was going to follow Trayvon Martin because he suspected him of doing something. Right. Who knows? He even called 911, said, hey, this guy, I think he's
right
doing bad things.
I think
whatever.
I've heard it, yeah.
Whatever. And the 911 operator said, okay, don't follow him. We'll look into it.
Yeah.
He followed him anyway.
Sure.
And we don't know what happened.
Right. That's what I'm saying, though. We don't know what happened.
Well, that's the thing. Nothing would have happened if George Zimmerman hadn't kept following him.
Right.
And, stalking him.
That's semantics. I mean, you can't really say that. But that doesn't say what happened, though, at all. I mean, like, that's like...
but Trayvon Martin didn't commit a crime. That's what I'm saying.
Probably. Yeah, probably not. We don't.
Yeah, at the very most,
there is an argument that he could have assaulted George, though, right? Like, he could have been like, "Hey, quit following me," and then like went and attacked him. I don't know.
Yeah, but I wouldn't even blame him for that. That's what I'm saying.
Really?
Yeah, I mean, it's somebody.
Listen, I can't
like
condone violence just because somebody's following you. I think you call the police and have them deal with it, right? Like you can't
if you
like
don't
justify
have a phone, which he didn't.
Oh, okay, that might be true. I don't know.
Yeah,
like I said, I'm not very qualified. I'm not very qualified to talk about this, but for sure you can't commit violence against somebody.
Yeah.
Okay. I think self-defense is another thing.
Yeah.
Self-defense is another thing, but like to attack somebody, that's a bad idea. You're going to be the one that gets thrown in jail.
We don't know who attacked who.
Sure.
We know that there was a scuffle.
Right.
That's all we really know. But my point in all that is my immediate assumption was he must have been doing something.
Okay.
But my assumption was wrong because he wasn't doing anything
something
until this guy created an incident.
Yeah.
You see what I'm saying?
That's interaction in general. Somebody's going to create an instance. It's how you react to it.
Right.
Like, trust me, I don't think I'm on George Zimmerman's case, but I do like to try to look at things objectively.
Yeah.
Right. I do like to try to be objective when I look at anything, and to play devil's advocate too, especially with you. I feel like you and I. So a lot of times I'll go like in the last podcast. I started defending the what is it, the Electoral College, and I'm like, oh wait, yeah, you're right, I'm opposed. It's like sometimes I'm just like naturally like make an argument just to make an argument.
I can't stand the Electoral College.
Yeah.
Here's how you know, by the way, that the Democrats are not so concerned about fixing the system so that progressives can win and that kind of thing. They're not doing anything about the Electoral College. They're not talking about it. The Electoral College is one of the main things that screwed Hillary Clinton over. She won that election according to popular vote, but they're not doing anything about that, are they? And by the way, that's also why Al Gore lost. They lost 2 elections out of the last 5 because of the Electoral College, but they're not talking about that.
And why don't you think that? Why do you think they're not talking about it?
I think it still allows, the Electoral College still allows more establishment control.
Okay.
Which
in a way, like, okay, so like actually looking back into it, like I think you're right. I think the Electoral College is bad. I also think, and this is something that Rogan was talking about recently, is I also don't think that everyone should be able to vote.
Well, it depends on what criteria you
Well,
use.
so yeah, well, Joe used the criteria like you have to take a test, like you have to know what you're voting on. You know what I mean? Like you take a test as to like, okay, what's this about, kind of thing.
Yeah, I've thought about that too, and you come into very dangerous territory on that.
Where people who are writing the test and like how that turns out. Yeah, no, you're right. But he makes a point, because when they wrote the Constitution or whatever it was that governed who gets to vote, it was landowners. It wasn't just everyone. And the reason for that is because they thought that landowners were probably going to be more educated. They're granted, they're probably going to have a little bit more money, but they're also more educated, more affected by the issues that they're voting on. And certainly,
I don't know about more affected though. And that's
okay. Yeah, you might be right.
That's kind of the point of why the test is very dangerous territory, because if you have only people who are educated enough to know all these things, well, then all these other people with all these other interests who might be completely different from the people who are more educated, well, now their interests aren't being addressed. So because they can't, can't vote.
What do you think about stupid people though? Because
I think most people are stupid.
I think you're right. I don't know if I do, man.
No, I get what you're saying.
Like for sure,
it's a very complicated issue.
You're absolutely right. It's so complicated.
Because I have thought about, okay, instead of you don't want a literacy test, for example, like they used to use to try to keep black people away, because black people, generally speaking, weren't literate back in the day when they tried that. Of course, the Civil Rights Voting Rights Act was made to counter that. So you don't want that kind of test. But if you had a test where it was specific to the candidate you're voting for, so what are the policies that your candidate wants? Name 5 policies or something like that your candidate wants to push for. Like, you have to know something about the candidate you're going to vote for.
Right. Yeah.
I might be okay with that.
Yeah.
You see what I'm saying?
But
I don't want an IQ test.
Yeah.
I don't want just a test to see if you're intelligent or whatever, because then only the people who are lacking
we're all getting
education will be kept out, and they may be the ones who need to vote the most. They may be the ones whose interests are being ignored more than anybody else's. So I want them to have the ability to vote, but I want them to know something about the people they're voting for too.
Sure. Yeah. Man. I think we're getting dumber. I think, and here's
America,
why.
You're right. Yeah.
One of the things, especially this, everybody gets a trophy mentality that happened recently. I don't know if it's still going on. It might be.
Oh, to some degree, yeah.
Yeah. I think that's not helpful. But one of the things for sure is that life,
self-esteem.
You guys argue with me on this, but I stand by it. I think life is too easy. And what I mean by that, I don't mean like you don't encounter struggles as a normal person, but you're not going to starve to death. That's pretty tough to do these days. You know what I mean? Like back when this country was forming, like people lived off of $1 a day. That's like, I think it's like inflated to today's standards. So you know what I mean?
In some ways, we're a lot better off. Definitely.
Well, we definitely are, but
then in other ways, we're so much worse off. It's ridiculous.
How so?
Not necessarily compared to the start of the nation. So the start of the nation is a lot rougher than people make it out to be.
Sure.
A lot rougher for a lot of people. Most of the time when we talk about the start of the nation, we're talking about the landowners, because they were the people that mattered.
Right.
And the other people didn't. And those people were struggling. But what about stress? How much time you have to do the things you want to do, that kind of thing.
Yeah.
We were much better off, 50 years ago than we are today.
You could make an argument that has to do with technology and how we're always inside nowadays, and like, you know what I mean? Like,
here's where the difference
is. Your time inside.
I'll give you some statistics. Okay, they won't be exact, but this will give you an idea of exact. So, in this country, there has been a gigantic redistribution of wealth, and even though many people on the right propaganda media would have you believe that it's all about redistribution of wealth is about taking it from the top, getting it to the bottom. We've actually had a redistribution of wealth the other way. where it's gone from the bottom to the top. And I'll give you a couple things to think about on that. So the median income, I think that's the right word. I'm not talking about the average, okay? I'm talking about the person who's exactly in the middle. The income, the median income, the person who's exactly in the middle. In 1980, that person was making more than $30,000 a year. Nowadays, that person is making less than $30,000 a year. So since 1980, we now have more people making less than $30,000 a year. And that's, and when you count inflation, when you put inflation into this, so a candy bar when I was a kid, it was like about 25 cents and something like that.
Yeah.
I was born in the 80s, okay, just to give you an idea. And now it's, what, last I saw was like $100, or I'm sorry, $100.
$100.
Yeah, $100. It's even worse than I imagined. It's like $1.59 or something like that. Not even close. We're talking, it's more than quadrupled. The expense of everything is more than quadrupled for a lot of different things. So you're not only are you making less money, but everything costs so much more. So we're nowhere near when it comes to the working class. Whereas, on the other hand, the top 10% of the country has increased their wealth by more money than even existed before 1980. Okay,
yeah.
So there's
thanks to the government.
Yeah, a lot of that's true.
But no, I'm not blaming the government for the redistribute. But what I'm saying is they've printed so much more money for themselves, which then trickles down into making our money less valuable.
The problem was corruption. So
yeah, absolutely.
So in the 70s, late 70s, there were a couple of Supreme Court decisions that essentially they put money into politics, where they said that money equals speech, and so you can just buy all these political ads. And so essentially the person with the most money had the stronger voice, had a louder voice, which I think destroyed speech in a way, because it made it unequal for everybody, whereas an equal voice was the important aspect of freedom of speech. But since that time, so up until around 1980, okay, so productivity levels were going kind of at like a 45-degree angle on the chart. And so was wages and compensation for the workers. Since that time, productivity levels have continued to rise, still at that 45-degree angle, whereas wages and compensations have flatlined.
Okay.
So now there's more control now by the businesses, how much they want to pay their workers, that kind of thing, as opposed to where there was before. And a lot of that has to do with the disappearance of unions, that kind of thing. A lot of jobs being shipped overseas, NAFTA, TAFTA,
right,
all that good
stuff. And I think
there's a lot of
probably that's considered in those statistics, isn't it, as the people that are working overseas, I would imagine.
Well, those people aren't counted because they're talking about American jobs.
Okay, it's American, okay.
But if you want to include those people, they're making even less money.
Right, it's probably going down.
So it's even worse.
Considering that,
yeah, it's even worse.
So the argument for that, and I'm not sure if this is just what I've heard.
Sure.
Is that, well, your quality of life is increasing.
But it's not.
Well, I don't know. I might argue that.
The things you have are better.
Yeah, that's what I'm saying.
But if you're working 2-3 jobs, you don't have a lot.
I don't know a lot of people. See, you've used this before, and I think this is something that I might consider an assumption. I think this is
a difference of experience between you and me.
You're right. You might be right, yeah. I can accept that.
I worked in a shit ass job.
I have too.
I worked at a gas station for about 5 years, making just barely more than minimum wage. And I became an assistant manager, making just a little bit more than a minimum wage for a while. Sure. And just so people understand, I was also trying to start my own business and that kind of thing at the same time. And that's why it lasted so long.
Sure.
But and I failed. But anyways.
But you learned from it.
A lot of the people, I learned that I'm not going to try to do that again, is what I learned. Because my body failed on me, is what it was. Okay. I just couldn't take it anymore.
Yeah.
And I needed medical care as well. That's why I went to where I am now.
Yeah.
But anyways, the people that I knew were working their asses off, had nothing. There were people that, they only had... they had 2 jobs or 3 jobs or something like that, or they were just barely making it on like a 2-income house or something like that.
Yeah.
So
it's something that I think is important when you're considering these people are the choices that they made on the way there?
If it was a tiny percent of the country, I would agree with you. But
I think it is a tiny percentage.
Our largest employer in America now is Walmart, and this is another thing to put into perspective. So, our largest employer in 1980 was General Motors, I think, and the average wage for people that worked there was $50 an hour.
It's no secret that our country isn't producing like it used to.
Right.
And that's because of I mean, you might even be able to blame the internet a little bit, just because companies have become so much more globalized. Like there's so much more opportunity to make money if you're on a global scale than if you are just on a local or like a national level. You know what I mean?
The biggest reasons it became more globalized, though, was actually due to trade deals, NAFTA and TAFTA, for example, and the TPP would have made it even worse.
Isn't NAFTA a good thing?
By the way, even though I hate Donald Trump, thank you, Donald Trump, for stopping the TPP.
Yeah, well, isn't NAFTA a good thing?
No, NAFTA was terrible because it allowed companies to ship jobs overseas and make more money that way.
So how did it do that?
One example is that you decrease what do they call it, the import tax, and that kind of thing. So it allows you to bring more products in from other countries without the extra expense.
So for me, I think this makes sense to me, okay? But an import tax is really just a tax on the consumer. Because, yeah, sure, the company has to pay that up front, but how do they get that money back? By charging the people that are buying their products. I don't think that that's a good argument for that.
No, what I'm saying is, whether you like the import tax or not, this is one example of why it became more financially beneficial for them to ship the jobs overseas.
Okay.
Because without that tax, let's say that there's no import tax whatsoever. Well, if you can pay 5 cents an hour to somebody in it's an unrealistic number, but
some other country,
in some other country, then ship it over. That's cheaper than paying someone a good wage here in America.
Right. So okay, let's say that we have an import tax, because I'm not sure you grasped what I was saying.
Okay.
So let's say you have an import tax. I don't even know what a normal import tax would be, but let's say we have one. Okay, and that brings it back to my point is like, yes, you're making it cheaper to send things overseas. I agree with that. But at the same time, if you put a tax on it, that's really a tax on who's ever buying the product. Because let's say we make it just as expensive to bring it back in after you've made the product overseas. Let's say it would be the same cost as if okay, I guess I kind of see where you're going now.
You're not entirely wrong.
Yeah, so if it costs the same, then what's the difference? Because the expense is going to end up on the people buying the product in the end, because the company wants to make the same money either way.
Right, but then the consumer is not going to want to buy your product if you're charging more for it. So they're going to go for the ones they're bringing stuff in from overseas because that's going to be cheaper. You see what I'm saying?
No, it's not going to be cheaper. That's what I'm saying.
If there's no import tax, it is.
Right. No.
Does that make sense?
Yes. Yeah. Okay. I think I see where you're coming from. Like, so what you're saying is like if it's going to be the same cost either way, well, we might as well keep the jobs that are here that are already here.
Right.
That's what you're saying. Okay.
Exactly.
I get that.
So I know this from my own experience. I want to buy American products. But I'm not going to if they cost outlandishly
right. No one is.
And most other consumers are just like that. They can only afford so much.
Let me ask you this. So what is the difference though? So here's an argument against that. Okay. So if it's gonna benefit, which I think it is, if it's gonna benefit more people, because let's be real, the people that are buying the things are much more broadly affected than the people that are making it, right? Because there's a smaller group of people that would be making this product than would probably be buying it, right?
They're affected by whether or not their product becomes easier or harder to sell. So they're still affected in a way. You see what I'm saying? So it's still cheaper for them to send it overseas because now they can
right,
charge less. They can
I'm,
charge less and still make just as much money.
Right, but also isn't the savings also passed on to the people that are buying it, which is more like, wouldn't you say that those people are more broadly affected?
Oh, I see what you're saying.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So like, wouldn't the cost to benefit be better because there are like people are buying things for less than there would be people making it.
I get what you're saying.
Yeah.
So and that goes back again to the circulation of money in the economy.
Mm-hmm.
So those people are going to have the better jobs if there is the import tax. Let's say we get rid of all the trade deals.
Sure.
Okay, and it's not so beneficial to send those jobs overseas. All the people here are now making that good money, right? And so they're able to buy more stuff too.
Well, all of them maybe. Well, yeah, but they're not. The problem is
yeah,
now
I get what you're saying.
Now the problem is now they're already over there, right? Like and it doesn't matter whether you bring it back or not. It's going to cost them more money to bring the jobs back over here than it would be to not.
Oh, it's not an easy transition.
No,
it wouldn't be. I mean, that is a difficult thing, but I mean, you could slowly increase import taxes, that kind of thing, and slowly you're gonna have more jobs opening up here, just because it becomes more beneficial to have it here.
I'm not sure, man. I don't know. I think because the point I was trying to make earlier is like it's if products as a whole are cheaper, and granted, immorally so, right? Because these people that are making them now are being paid dirt. Like
some of them are literally slaves. Yeah.
Right. Yeah. So I mean, immorally so. But as far as a benefit to us, so really we ought to be pressuring other governments to increase their to make it so that people are
so one thing
paid
you could
a fair
do.
Wage.
One thing you could do, as an example, is talking specifically on the slavery issue. So if your country allows slavery, we don't buy your products, sort of thing. There's an embargo. There's an embargo on your products to come into our country.
Well, it's not slavery though; they still get paid. It's abysmal.
Well, sometimes they get paid in food and that kind of thing. So I mean, that if you call that paying somebody, then slaves were paid too.
I guess you're right. Yeah. But yeah, it's tricky, man. It really is. Our government has not done us any favors. And I feel like that's something that people that want socialism miss so much. It's like the government has had power. Yeah. And the power is growing. It's not going the opposite direction. I mean, let's face it. If you work so hard to get into a position of power, you're not going to just relinquish your power, once you get there. Because that's, probably one of the incentives that people had to get in that position in the first place, right? And so our government has had power, and look where we are, man.
Yeah,
I
think that's a result of the system that we created. And this mostly goes to money and politics, I believe.
Right,
because that's when the big transition happened.
But that's the problem with socialism for me, man. That's the problem. It gives all the power to the government. Okay, or it gives the government
all the power.
Well, not all the power, but it gives the government the power to say this is what happens here, this is what happens here. Like it gives government a lot more power.
That's why
they can't be trusted. Yeah. And what happens, like what happened in Venezuela, is the politically connected get rich and wealthy, and the poor people go all flatline and they starve. They start eating rats. They start making it illegal for the hospitals to report starvation as a death so that it doesn't look like as many people are starving to death. That's what's going on in Venezuela.
That kind of thing happens here too, though.
Does it?
Yeah.
Well, on a much smaller scale, I would imagine.
Well, just as an example. So,
okay.
So in America right now, we do not have socialized medicine, socialized healthcare, and there are about 30,000 people each year, estimated, that die every year due to a lack of healthcare. Whereas that just doesn't happen in any other developed nation on Earth. And that's only in our country. That's as an example. And I forgot where I was going with it.
Well, so the healthcare thing's tricky for me, right? Because in a lot of ways, I don't know, man.
But actually,
I don't think I should be having to pay for your health care. It's particularly, I mean, think of like how many complications some people just have just because they were born that way. You know what I mean? And why should everyone else be forced to take on the cost of that? Especially people who maybe have other things on their plate, right? You know, like look at how much we pay in federal income tax. You know, you want to talk about boosting the economy and using you know, like wealth distribution and those kinds of things, and your whole idea of like you give me 20, 20, 20, you know, like that kind of thing that you illustrated earlier. You want to talk about that. Like, let's get rid of the federal income tax. Think of it, because what does the federal government do for you?
Well, I
fucking
mean,
nothing.
Obviously, there is the military and that kind of thing.
Right, which we could do with much less of. We don't need to be policing the world.
I was going to say,
you know,
we could cut it down to a fourth of what it is.
I think Russia literally pays. So our biggest
like
enemies.
$63 billion.
You know, I watched Pamela Anderson was on Tucker Carlson.
Okay.
She
I like
is
where
friends.
This is going.
Yeah. Well, you know what? Hear me out though.
Yeah.
You might be surprised. So she is friends with who's that guy that's in the Ecuadorian? He was the WikiLeaks guy.
Oh, Julian Assange.
She's friends with him. Goes to visit him regularly because he's not doing good, man. They cut off his internet. Like he's locked in that.
What's been going on to him is terrible.
It's terrible. And he's done us all favors.
He's
it's
like
crazy
the
that
best journalist in the world.
You might be right.
Yeah, I love that guy.
Yeah, and so she's friends with him, and she's also, this is crazy, she's also friends with Vladimir Putin. Okay, and so she talked about, you know, one of the running joke over in Russia is like, oh, what do we do now? You know, like, because the American government blames so much crap on Russia, like interfering with our elections. Guess what? We interfere with theirs too.
Well, no kidding. We've done it more than they
probably
have.
Way more. Yeah. And the idea, let me get Ben Shapiro. The idea that the idea that Russia had a major impact
it's ridiculous.
It's absurd.
And you know it's ridiculous because what do they keep talking about? Facebook and Twitter ads.
Yeah.
Like, how fucking ridiculous is that?
Well,
and by the way, most of those ads occurred after the election.
Who's stupid enough to get their news off of Facebook? I know a few people, but I'm just saying, like, you know what? That's probably the worst place to get it. You know what I mean?
Other than MSNBC, Fox News, or CNN, or Washington Post, or Wall Street Journal, or New York Times.
You're doing. Well, no, I think Facebook is worse.
Okay.
I mean, as far as propaganda goes, it's got to be worse, right? You know, how many things are people subscribed to, or not subscribed, but following that are just putting out garbage on a regular basis. At least every once in a while, CNN or Fox will get something right. You know what I mean? Whereas that other shit is just propaganda.
Well, the only thing I like about the Facebook thing is that you have all these individuals on there expressing all their individual ideas.
Yeah. So well, sometimes. I mean, a lot of times they're just dismissed as trolls. I mean, if you go in there with a different idea than what the post is targeting, that people just dismiss you as a troll, and they just dismiss you. The conversations on Facebook are null, I would say. There's people on there trying to get angry, you know. It's not really working. But we were talking about Putin. Oh yeah, Pamela Anderson on Tucker Carlson, and like I think that she has a point, man. Like I don't think that Russia I don't think that Russia is our biggest threat.
Definitely
not. And if they are,
they could be a tremendous ally. That's what
I agree with you. I do. I don't think that we need to be so concerned about Russia. I mean, like if you look at what got us at the point where we're about to hit the same thing, but what got us at the point of conflict, it was the whole nuclear situation, right? Where we had a nuclear weapon, we used it on Japan. And then we told everyone, okay, nobody should have these. And we'll get rid of ours. Yeah. We'll get rid of ours after everybody promises not to make them. And Russia, I think, fairly said, how about you get rid of yours, and then we'll all promise not to make them. I think that's a fair point.
Yes.
And that's what started the whole Cold War, man. Like then they're like, fuck you, we're not going along with this treaty of nobody makes them except for us. Because guess what? We were also using our nukes as threats. Like, oh, you better listen to us or we'll nuke you. Like that was a legitimate threat that the US was making back then. And so like I don't see Russia as a huge threat. And this brings me back to the point which I was trying to get to in the first place, which is that Russia spends, I think, a 20th, maybe less, of what we spend on our military. So if there's such a huge threat, why are we spending so fucking much? You know?
No, I'll make a point on that in a sec, but I do want to say the Cold War, I think, was mostly pushed again by the military-industrial complex.
Yeah, you're probably right.
So, because they made
so tons of money off of that, just preparing for war. That's got to be better than the wars the perpetual war that we're in right now.
I would have loved to have seen all the people that cried when the Cold War ended, because there were people. Oh my God, all that money I was just making.
Yeah, well, they probably if they banked it, they weren't crying.
Yeah, so we just recently, and by the way, you Hillbots out there, keep this in mind. We increased military spending with the help of Democrats, by the way, by I know it's more than $80 billion. I've heard figures of $100 billion, something like that. It's every year we've increased it by this. That was our increase. We've increased it by that much. Russia only spends about $63 billion.
Yeah, 60 something.
$63 billion.
We spend like 1.3 trillion or something like that. So, and you wanna talk about what's his name, Bezos, and taking his money and redistributing it? How about we fucking cut the military budget and redistribute that?
If you want
what I mean?
If you want to talk about priorities, I'm with you.
Yeah.
My priority is get rid of the military spend, not completely get rid of it.
No, obviously we need a defense. That'd be crazy to just completely dismantle the military. And
I would completely dismantle the CIA, on the other hand.
You would or would not?
Absolutely. Yeah, get rid of that.
That one's tricky for me, man. That one, because obviously,
because they work against the U.S.
I think you're probably right. I think, but I think that, so there's definitely bad actors, right? And then there's the CIA that actually is that.
I think the CIA is a bad actor.
The entire thing.
Yes.
Really?
Yes. And here's the thing. The NSA, for example, not that much better.
No. Well, they're worse. Who are they spying on? Us. Right? I mean, like they're the ones listening to all our phone calls. Well, true, but
yeah, no, I hear exactly what you're saying. There's problems with all these agencies. I think the CIA is the worst of them because they work directly against our interests over and over and over again. The American people's interest, mind you.
Yes.
They work directly for corporate interests.
Yes.
And they have for a long time.
Military-industrial complex.
You go back to the when they overthrew Mossadegh in Iran in the 1950s. The first democratically elected president of Iran, and we completely destroyed that in oil interest, for oil interest, basically.
Yeah.
And, of course, this is what led to ayatollahs and all that good stuff, and that's why we have this issue today. It's working.
So,
go ahead.
Can I? Yeah, sorry to cut you off, but so the oil thing, was that not a response to something that happened? Was it in the 80s? I want to say where we were in, was it OPEC that punished the United States for some reason? But for some reason, OPEC decided to punish the U.S. I probably should look more into this. But there were gas lines. There were people waiting for gas because like fuel in the United States was actually like it was scarce. You know what I mean? Like you had to wait in line for hours sometimes just to fill up your car. This actually happened. Okay. And it was because OPEC, and I think the United States and the people of the United States were like, yeah, how about we don't ever let that happen again?
Well, that there may have been an incident like that, but you mentioned the 80s. I'm talking back in the 50s is when this happened. And by the way, this is something that keeps going on and on and on. Most of the time, if you look at our foreign policy, whenever we get hostile in any way, shape, or form towards another country. Oftentimes, 9 times out of 10, we're going to be talking about oil interests is why we're doing it. This includes the Russia incident, by the way. So Russia is an ally of Syria, and right now, Saudi Arabia is trying to create an oil pipeline through Syria. Okay, and this is where the tension is coming from, is that Syria is getting in the way of constructing that oil, because Russia is also an oil supplier, and they want all the profits from the oil. America wants all the profits from the oil. It all goes back to money, is where all this is coming from. It amazes me. I mentioned this before. If we were really concerned, if we really wanted to get rid of Donald Trump, okay, we could easily do it. We could use the emoluments clause, all his special interests, if you will. Can't think of the right word. He's corrupt, and it's obvious, and it's legally wrong. And we could get rid of him.
He's corrupt.
Yes.
I think he's less corrupt than previous.
He's dumber corrupt is the only thing.
He's dumber.
And that's the thing. his interests are in the
I like the fact that he's an outsider.
His interests are in the hands of his family instead of like a blind trust or something like that.
He's not even. You see, you know.
But
I don't
even want to go there though.
I would love for Trump to go on Rogan. I would love it. Because I think
actually.
that would be what I would base my judgment on. Because I can't trust what I hear. I just can't. You know, and it's not that I think that he's inherently good, or you know what I mean. But I'll tell you one thing: I like that he's an outsider. I do like that. And I think that they are trying to get him out because he is an outsider.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? And that also I like. I like the fact that they're trying to get rid of him. There's an active attempt to get rid of him, and that's obvious.
I agree.
Yes, I like that. That to me, that's probably a good thing. Like I don't know why. You know what I mean? But to me, I'm like, okay, this is probably a good thing. If they're trying to get rid of him, it means he's anti-establishment, and that's probably a good thing.
What I'll agree with you on. He is definitely. I got it. I'm on it.
Oh yeah, good job.
Yeah. But anyways, he's to me. He is corrupt.
Okay.
There's no doubt about that. Is he better than some of the alternatives? Is he better than, for example, Hillary Clinton? I think so.
I think he is.
I think so.
I think he could be.
It doesn't mean he's good.
No, you're right.
So you just see what I'm saying?
But
the establishment may not like him, and they may want to get rid of him because they want Mike Pence in charge because he's an establishment through and through.
Which would be worse.
Yes, I agree. That's what amazes me is that people don't recognize that. He would be worse, especially for the progressive agenda. But I mean, you want to take down Donald Trump? What about Saudi Arabia? All of a sudden allowing him to open up a bunch of businesses there and similar things in Israel. There are things we could take him down on, and nobody's doing it because the others do it too.
Yep.
I made this point before. It's not the corruption they're talking about that's important. It's the corruption they're not talking about, because that's the corruption that they're all hiding. Does that make sense?
Yep.
Yeah.
Yep. You're right. You're not. Yeah, that's absolutely correct. But more times than not, I find myself defending Trump because there's some crazy cooked up thing, like the Russia thing, you know, like, and there's other examples of that.
I don't like talking bad about Trump.
I don't
because every time I talk bad about Trump, I feel like I could spend that time talking about how bad, say, the Democratic Party is or the Republican Party is, or you know, because those people are worse. They are.
Well, and so, you know, like I find myself defending him just because, like, a lot of the crap that they throw out there, like, is just garbage, you know, like, or it's like, why are we even talking about this? And like I said, I like the thing, like, I'm not, it sounds like I am, but I'm not necessarily pro-Trump, but I'm anti-establishment. I'm definitely that. You know, I'm anti-government. And I like the idea that he's an outsider. For sure, I would agree with you. Like the whole thing where he made like $100 billion weapons deal with Saudi Arabia right away and that kind of stuff. That you know, that kind of sucks. I'm like, damn, dude, you let me down. But like I said, I would love to hear an objective perspective from Trump. Because, I mean, even you...
Objective from Trump?
Well, I would like
to
hear.
Get that,
well, you're probably you might be right, but what I'm saying is, like, I would like to hear someone who I trust interview him in a long format, like on Rogan, you know, like on something like that. I would like to hear what he has to say, and then I will base my position on Trump from there.
There are so many people I would love to
to
have interview him.
Yeah,
Joe Rogan would be one. Although Joe Rogan's he's too soft in a way to the people he talks
You're right.
to.
He is, dude. He definitely he'll along, even though because he's disagreed with somebody before on that. You know, maybe somebody he was more comfortable with disagreeing with,
which is cool. That's the format of his show, and I'm cool with that.
Absolutely.
And I like it.
Yeah, I like Joe. He very, I want to say, intelligently avoids confrontation.
Yes,
you know, and not just from his guests, but from
sometimes he'll do it, but not.
Well, he gets it though. Yeah. He definitely gets hit with like, oh, you're alt-right. You know, all those crazy fucking people on the internet. But I think he very intelligently avoids confrontation, and not just from his guests, but also from the people that listen to him.
Right.
You know, he doesn't take controversial stances very often.
That's one of the reasons I would like to see him and Joe Rogan and Donald Trump. I'd also like to see Jordan Sheridan. He used to work for the Young Turks and got fired. But he's a very fiery reporter who will ask the hard questions.
Yeah.
I'd love to see him interview Donald Trump. That would be wonderful.
Yeah. But like I was saying, I'd love to get an actual someone who I trust interviewing him. You know, and he doesn't do media anymore, I don't feel like. Candace gave him a great...
He doesn't have to.
No. Yeah. Candace gave him a great... what's the word? Just gave him a great, you know, like review, I guess, in a way. And I trust Candace a lot. She shares a lot of the same views that I do. Is with the outrage culture, with the identity politics, you know, anything like that. She's very much against it, and I love it. I love the fact that it's a black woman, black attractive woman, doing that, and that's something that also she identified both on Rubin and Rogan, where she was saying how, you know, it's the status quo for black people to be left, for them to have these views, for them to, you know what I mean, to be to say, oh, and that's something I wanted to hit on too, is like, even when during the election, and you and I were talking, you know, you even called Trump racist, you know, and I
think he is. Here's
where's your evidence?
One thing I wanted to mention, because I know that you, the comparison of Trump to Hitler, you really don't like that.
Well, I don't think it's valid.
Okay, I sort of understand that, but if you look at what the Muslim issue, okay, for example, when in the campaign he was talking about, not only did he want to ban Muslims from entering the U.S., which he's tried to do. He's actually tried to do it.
Sure.
Fortunately, the courts wouldn't allow
it. But why?
But then on top of that, also, he wanted to register Muslims.
Ooh, okay.
Yeah.
I don't remember that.
This was another part of his campaign. Yeah,
I don't remember that.
So there's a reason why people we're talking about the comparison between Trump and Hitler, because there is a comparison to be made there. And he was a proponent of ideas that could potentially lead to Holocaust type of issues.
Yeah, here's the thing: is I don't know what leads to that.
Yeah,
you know, or I don't know how you get there.
Yeah.
You know, like I'm sure you could probably identify things that lead to that
registering.
Stuff. Yeah, that
religion.
Well,
is a pretty
maybe
good,
not.
Maybe
not.
Sign.
maybe not though, right?
Okay.
Like, does causation equal correlation? I mean, you know what I mean? Like, is that a causing factor?
Oh, well, Nazi Germany wasn't the only people to do it. The only genocidal maniacs to do it.
Okay.
It happened differently, but even the Roman Empire did the same thing. When Christianity became the top religion in Rome, then they started going after all the other religions. You know, it's that kind of thing. Go ahead.
Well, no, I was letting you.
Because I don't have much.
So
more
I
to
mean,
say
the
than
U.S.
that,
did something similar to that, didn't they? We had our own sort of concentration camp for Japanese people.
Yes.
And that's not something that we talk about very often.
I know,
it's something that is mentioned like in history class and stuff, but it's never extensively covered. It's not, you know, obviously it's something, it's where, you know, the government is in control of the schools, so they're also in control of the curriculum.
See, this is another thing that bothers me. And the way you talk about the indoctrination in college, I actually worry more about the indoctrination in the younger years.
Yeah.
And this includes, so we mention the Japanese concentration camps, and we mention the Trail of Tears. We mention all these things, but we don't actually delve into them. What we delve into is when the other guys are the bad actors.
Right.
You know, and this is its own form of propaganda.
Well, absolutely. And it's like they say, the victors get to write the history books. So who knows what really happened?
Right.
There's plenty of people that theorize that, you know, not 6 million Jews weren't killed and who knows? I mean, how can we be sure?
How can you and I be sure?
Yeah.
I mean, difficult to say. I mean, obviously there is a mountain of evidence. We do have, you know, pictures of the the graves filled with bodies.
Yeah, but okay, but I mean, there might be a couple hundred bodies there. You definitely can't say 6 million.
By the way, I do want to say on the free speech issue, because this does come up. So a Holocaust denier, somebody who denies that the Holocaust even happened against the Jews, I think that person is just as in fact, his free speech needs to be protected even more.
Absolutely.
Than somebody who.
Yes, well, free speech isn't for the status quo
the
or
accepted ideas.
Yes, that's not what it's for. It's for people who aren't going against that. And it's important. That stuff is important. That's why I say, like racist people, I was about to say they're important, but that's not. You know what I mean.
I know what you mean.
Yeah, it's like it's important that they're allowed to have those ideas. And by the way, those ideas are very easy to shut down.
Yes.
You know what I mean? They're very easy to.
And that's number one why I want them talking, because
Yeah, okay.
I want to know who they are too.
That brings me to the whole. That brings me back to the Baker thing. I'm glad we got here.
Okay.
Yeah. Like
we've come full circle.
When you're a gay person and you're getting a cake from somebody who's being maybe who would not want to make you a cake, right? So they could be, who knows what they could be putting in your cake. And when they're forced to hide the fact that they are against what they're doing for you.
Oh, not forced to hide. So here's a stipulation that I want to put on.
Yeah.
So the baker can make the cake and go protest at the wedding. Okay, not on private property, but just outside on the sidewalk or whatever.
Yeah,
just like the Westboro Baptist Church does.
Okay,
I'm totally cool with that. You make the cake and then go protest the wedding. I'm perfectly cool with that.
Interesting, but would they?
Know.
Or would they just jerk off in the batter? You know what I mean? Like, what's a better form of protest than to actually directly affect and really be able to be behind the lines? You know what I mean? So in a way, you would kind of want those people out in the open, right? Mm-hmm. You know what I mean? And
oh, definitely.
And so let them discriminate, because one, why would you want to give someone that has those ideas your money? Two, why would you want somebody who you probably can't trust to do something for you, to do something for you? Mm-hmm. You know what I mean? And it just, for me, let them be the bigot. Let's call them out for being a bigot, right? And then also maybe even, I'm perfectly fine with a newspaper article or something like that, but let's not force people to do things they don't want to do. I'm always against that.
Just to clarify something on that. So my understanding of the story, and it's been a few years since I really looked into it, but my understanding of the story is the reason why they went after the baker. The reason why they went there, they knew other people who had been through this, who had gone there and been rejected and that kind of thing, and they didn't want that to happen to anyone else. And so what they did was they put themselves on the line, in front of the firing squad, if you will, because they knew they were going to get a lot of hate, a lot of anger, a lot of death threats, that kind of thing.
I'm sorry, I can't get behind that. Like, if you know, then why are you going there?
They went there in order to expose what was happening.
That I'm okay with.
And to stop it from
happening.
Okay, so
again. Write your news article and then move on, man. You don't need to try to get the government involved.
But they wanted to make sure it didn't happen to anyone else. Now, whether or not you agree with what they, whether or not you agree with them politically on this, okay?
Yeah.
What they were trying to do, their intentions were good, even if their actions.
Okay.
You see what I'm saying?
I see. Yeah. Well, I get that. I mean, I never doubted that in the first place, I don't think. But what I don't like is that they're trying to use the government to force their agenda. Does that make sense?
Yeah, I get that. I mean, sometimes you kind of have to, though.
Maybe that's true. And I'm sure we could probably find an example where that was necessary. But
gay marriage.
When it comes,
I mean, that's actually a perfect example.
Well, I don't think the government should be involved in marriage in the first place.
Okay. Now, if the government gets completely out of marriage and there's no legal aspects of marriage at all, I'm totally on board.
Yeah.
And then
you can't discriminate.
Each individual church can decide at that point.
Yeah, exactly.
And
then exactly. Well, okay. So, and that brings me back to it, Chris, is like, why are you okay with churches making that decision but not bakers?
Okay. All right. So the church. There is a difference. So I don't agree in forcing someone to participate in the wedding. So
okay.
I don't.
Oh, I see what you're saying.
You know what I mean? If you making a product,
but isn't marrying people kind of a business?
Well, yeah, in a way.
Yeah,
in a way. I see that's where it gets a little more tricky. So creating a product for a marriage, but not going there and participating, I think it's different from actually participating in it. You know, and that's where I would make the distinction there. So I wouldn't force a church to actually go there. But if the church is creating a product and a gay marriage or a gay wedding wants that product, then the church has to provide that product. So, my opinion.
So wait,
does that make sense?
Yeah, I see. Yeah. I get your point. So if let's switch it to an artist, okay? Because I'm gonna tie this up at the end, so just bear with me. So do you think that that anyone should be able to stand over the side of a or should be able to force an artist to paint a particular painting?
No.
Okay. So in this instance, the baker had already made the pre-made cakes. The commission was for him to decorate the cake in a certain fashion that would promote, or not promote, but would be acceptable at a gay wedding, right? Okay. And so
can you elaborate on that? I just so I understand what you mean by that.
So maybe putting like two guys on there, or like putting two names that were two guys, but effectively decorating the cake so that it would be for a gay wedding. You know what I mean? Like it would make more sense at a gay wedding. Maybe even putting two guy figurines, which I agree is stupid. Okay, I'm with you. I'm not like but what I am defending is this guy's right to choose what he creates. Okay, because in fact, I think that you could argue that the decoration of the cake is art. And like we established in the last podcast, he didn't say that he wouldn't sell them a cake. It's like, oh, you can pick out anything in the store, but I'm not going to decorate it for you.
Okay, so I don't know exactly what the situation was as far as what kind of cake they were trying to get or anything like that. So I don't want to speak too much on that. What I'll just elaborate my position on it. So if what they're asking for is normal cake, okay, they're not asking him to write "I love to fuck men" on there or something like that.
Well, they weren't asking that.
You're right. I just want to clarify.
Yeah.
If they're asking something which is explicitly saying explicitly an endorsement of gay marriage,
well, when
then
you
I
say
understand.
Putting the two figures of two men on there, or maybe just the names of two men on there, or
as far as the figurines goes, I kind of get the argument.
Like, here's the thing, right? Like, let him decorate the cake.
Yeah.
Or, well, I don't know if he
it's
still
just,
would. But then put your own shit on it, or you decorate it yourself. Get the cake. You know what I mean? Like, it's just such a stupid issue to me.
This is kind of where I was going with it. So, if it's just a normal cake, if it's just I want a beautiful cake. You're great at making beautiful cakes. Please make this cake for my wedding. And he's not having to put anything that's explicitly, I accept gay people, or I accept gay marriage, or anything like that. Then just make the cake, And by the way, as far as putting the names on there, okay, are you going to have a problem if it's if it's a guy's name and then it's a girl who has a name that looks like a guy? Is that going to bother you too? It's just names. That I don't see the problem there either. When you talk about the two guys on the top of the cake or something like that, I start to understand that because now you are kind of.
Well, here's what I think, Chris. I think we might be heading down the wrong road as far as arguing this, because I think that his objection was not necessarily decorating the cake. However, that is the argument that
he didn't want to support the wedding,
right?
I get it.
And like in the sense, like decorating the cake, like is forcing him to do his art. In a way, you know what I mean? And so that's the argument that you can take to say, well, this guy shouldn't have to. You know what I mean? But his objection is irrelevant. And that's kind of what I tried to hit on the last one, is like, I don't think that even anyone should have to state their objection. I think they should just be able to say, oh, yeah, I don't want to. Sorry. Right. You know what I mean? And
I mean, obviously they would if a lawsuit did come about. But I mean, that's the thing. I'm still kind of on the fence on it. once we started talking about, okay, this is a commission cake and that sort of thing.
Yeah.
But he would provide a cake, one that was already made or something like that. He just didn't want to be commissioned for a cake. If that's true, I'm on the fence.
Yeah.
I'm kind of on the fence on that. However, do you think that would it have been okay if he said, no, I'm not going to provide any cake for that wedding?
I'm not going to.
So I have cakes that are already made, but you can't use that either.
Huh. Good question.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, that's not what happened. But, so hypothetically.
Hypothetically, yeah.
To refuse service. Again, I think, I don't know what's with this house. But I think that you have a right to, I mean, it's just like the no shoes, no service, you know what I mean? Like, or no shoes, no shirt, no service signs and stuff. Like, you can say who you want to cater to, I think. And it goes back to the whole, you know, you can expose this business, you know, like you can write a newspaper article. And it's not good for business to do that kinds of stuff, right? Like it doesn't benefit you. You're not going to make any money if you just are pointing out all kinds of people that you don't want to work for. Yeah. You know what I mean? Like it's going to hurt your business. It's going to hurt yourself. You know what I mean? So, I mean, yeah, I think I probably would be okay with that. No, I disagree with it.
Mm-hmm.
You know what I mean? Like I think that's not a good idea. But
that's where I'm definitely on the other side, in the sense that if you're selling a product, well, you have to sell it to anybody. It doesn't matter who it is. And by the way, I want to clarify this point because there's a confusion that happens often. So that you see that sign sometimes. We reserve the right to refuse service to anybody. Was there a problem with our recording?
No, keep going.
Okay, just make sure. All right, so there's the sign. We reserve the right to refuse service to anybody. It's not actually true. You don't actually have the right to refuse service to anybody you want. There has to be a reason. And so that sign is there so if somebody is being unruly or rude or something like that.
Or not wearing a shirt.
Exactly.
Or they're gay. Come on.
But no, that doesn't count as one, though.
Why not?
Because that's a discrimination. So that's not something
I'm okay with discrimination. I just want to say. I mean, we discriminate in our everyday lives. I mean, you discriminate which friends you want to hang out with. You discriminate what product you're going to.
Well, to be fair,
I mean, like all of that is
the person with no shirt, you're discriminating against people with no shirts. But I'm talking about when you're discriminating against who a person is or their sexual orientation.
Right, but you discriminate whether or not you want to be friends with a certain type of person all the time. Like you make discriminations. It's human.
That's different,
to do that. Maybe you might be right, but I think that like discrimination in itself is easy to identify. It's easy to shut down, and it doesn't need to have a legal precedent, especially in today's culture, man. I don't think that it's necessary. It's like feminism, like it's not really relevant today. Like women aren't really that oppressed. I disagree with you. I don't think that and that's exactly why they came after the gamers, right? Because they don't have any demons to go after, so they create them. Right?
There are people who see demons everywhere. And they, I'm with you on that, but I still think that there's issues. And by the way, there's also issues on the men's side too. Like having paid child support for 18 years and not having a choice about it.
Sure,
we talked about that before.
Yeah.
So I don't agree that there's no issues. So it's just not a thing. But I get what you're saying though.
Yeah. I think we're about at that time, Chris.
Is it? Yeah.
Or just over 3 hours.
Just over 3, huh?
Yeah, just over 3.
Okay.
It's about that time, man.
Well, we can start wrapping it up then.
We start, cue the music, that kind of thing.
Yeah. I didn't have anything else to say on that. So.
Yeah. But I think this was a good one. This was actually one of my favorites, I think. I think it
was fun, actually,
yeah, I had a good time. We had a lot of technical difficulties. One I didn't even tell you about. One was that we didn't start recording right away.
It'll be interesting.
As far as the podcast audio goes.
As with every episode, I still want to see what the reaction is from other people.
Yeah, well, and we got to figure out a way to get it out to more people. That would be awesome.
That too.
Yeah. But I think with that, probably have to call it
Call it a podcast.
Call it a podcast. So, hey, everybody, thank you for listening. Thank you for watching. If you tuned in, we appreciate you. And we'll see you next time.
Goodbye.
I wanna read my script apart.